Ian, it's really good to have this conversation with you, and it was partly prodded, not because of your age, but because of the fact that you decided early this year that it's probably the right time for you to retire from your current role here at the Parish Church, and we'll get back to that in a minute. And so I thought we need to have the chance to learn from your wisdom over these next months.
Well, I mean, I should say, like them all, I'm just here for the cake.
Good, I'm glad to hear it. Well, the theme we've chosen is partly because you've come up with that phrase, XYZ. And XYZ stands for?
Extra years of zest.
Which is a brilliant little phrase, isn't it? And maybe we'll make a brand out of that. Maybe we trademark it if you give us the rights. Extra years of zest. And certainly when I look at you, Ian, I can see how God has given you extra years of zest. If you saw Ian on most Saturday mornings, you would find him in some park, probably up in Yorkshire, because that's where you are. No, you're not. You're down here.
Yeah, I'm here on Saturdays.
On Saturdays.
Yeah. I'm usually in Castleberry Park in Watford, because that's just where my son lives, and we do the run together. We do park run together on a Saturday.
And park run is what, 500 metres?
It's 3 miles. 3 miles.
And in continental money, that's 5 kilometres.
That's 5 kilometres, yeah. Wow. And I might mention, by way of boasting, that on Saturday was my 252nd park run. Sorry, I couldn't help but slip that one in. And we've been talking about not thinking of ourselves more highly than we ought to think. I just slipped into that error, didn't I?
Ian is very good when we see him on a Sunday or during the week, and we say, how did the park run go? Usually he says something like, it went rather well. I came second in my age group. And sometimes you then don't boast because you tell us how many people were running in your age group.
2. Sometimes I come first because I'm the only one in the age group.
Now, I think it was quite recently, was it at the end of a park run, when something extraordinary happened with another person, another member of the public who you had never met before?
It was really interesting. On a Saturday morning, after the park run, we have been in the habit of getting breakfast together. So that's my son, sometimes the 3 boys and Katie as well, the whole family. And on this occasion, I'd driven my car to the car park. I was going to meet them in the restaurant for breakfast. And there was a man on the opposite side of the car park who waved at me. And I looked at him, I thought, I don't know him, but I'll wave. So I waved at him and then locked the car, and I was proceeding to go down the ramp. It's an underpass to get out of this car park. And he came across, and so he was standing over me as I walked down the ramp. He said, I've got to tell you. He said, I've got to tell you this. God is going to bless you. He's not finished with you. There are years of fruitfulness ahead of you, years and years of fruitfulness ahead of you. I've got to tell you, receive it from God, will you? So I said, yeah, thanks very much, I will. I don't know, you didn't know me from Adam. You know, I was wearing a tracksuit and running gear. I wasn't wearing a clerical collar, so you'd no idea whether I was a Christian or a pagan or what. But he just pronounced this blessing over me and told me there were. So I was really relieved to hear that, because you're not sure, you know, whether you're about to drop off the cliff, are you? So I've received that from God. Many years of fruitfulness ahead.
And what a lovely encouragement from God for you, completely out of the blue at this point in your life and in your ministry. Ian, I asked you to choose a passage for this conversation, and you chose this beautiful passage. Someone has once said, if the Bible is all the mountains in the world, then the book of Romans, some people describe as the Himalayas. And Romans chapter 8, some people describe as Mount Everest. It's one of those peaks where you can just see the good news in all its glory. But for this particular theme, tell us why you've chosen these verses from Romans 8.
I love the beginning of that section when Paul writes that God, who spared not his own son, but gave him up for us all, how will he not with him freely give us all things? Sorry, my mind goes back to the King James Version. But it reminds me, there was a missionary to China called Cecil Polhol, and he was a group of famous missionaries, and his father was very rich. And Cecil was working out in China, having a tough time, seeing little fruit. And one of the things they needed was money to provide a building for the people to come together and worship. And so he wrote to his dad and said, "Dad, this is the situation. Could you please provide some money for a building?" And his dad immediately transferred the money, and they got a fine building, and the work took on a new lease of life. They had the accommodation to welcome people. And one day, Cecil Polhol's father was walking down the street, and a friend was walking on the opposite side of the road. And he waved at him. He said, "I just wanted to say, I heard about what you did for Cecil. That was a wonderful thing that you did for your son. Well done." And he said, well, actually, once I'd let Cecil go, everything else came easy. Once I let my son go to the mission field to work for God in China, everything else came easy. So giving money was nothing in view of the fact that his son had gone and he'd waved goodbye, not knowing whether he'd ever see him again. Once I let my son go, everything else came easy. God, who spared not his own son, but gave him up for us all. With him, he freely gives us all things. In a sense, everything else comes easy. The grace of God, the abundance of God's love towards us flows into our lives, and nothing ever will separate us, it says in the final verses. And Paul kind of piles up the metaphors, doesn't he? Whether it be angels, what's the passage again about things present, things to come, height, depth, or anything else in all creation will be able to separate us from the love of God in Christ Jesus our Lord. So I just think that's so wonderful that God's abundant blessing is available to us and is poured upon us every day that we live.
Let's rewind a few years. 4 years ago, after you arrived in Denham, we talked a bit about the broad sweep of your life. But let's just rewind a few years, because a few years ago, you were looking forward to retirement with your wife, Barbara.
Yeah.
And then shortly after you retired, actually, she died of a brain tumour.
That's right. Yeah.
And in a sense, I would imagine you didn't feel like extra years of zest at that point. It was devastating.
Yes, it was a desperately difficult time and a very hard journey. And I'd retired at 68. We agreed together that would be the year that I would retire. So Easter Sunday in 2015 was to be my final Sunday as rector of All Saints Church Aston. And it was a wonderful day, but we just had this appalling experience of Barbara becoming very ill, rushed to hospital with seizures, and we'd also discovered that the cause of that was a brain tumour. So I told the people, we'd been told that it was eminently operable, that all would be well, and so we were looking forward to a summer of recovery. I told the people that Sunday morning about the circumstances, but I said, keep us in your prayers. We're looking forward to a summer of recovery, then a wonderful retirement together. Well, that was not to be. It was the worst kind of brain tumour, it turned out. And over the next 18 months, Barbara had really a terrible time. She never lost her confidence in God. She never lost her sense of peace. And she never lost her kind of radiance. That was just part of her character. She was really a radiant person. But it was a terrible illness. And then in the July of the following year, she died. So then, yes, it was a difficult time. And I needed then to be busy again. And I was busy locally in the diocese. But I just felt the yearn to belong to a team of people with vision and vitality, and not just be the priest that turned up to take a communion service, you know, the minister who came along just to preach and then withdrew again. I wanted to be part of a community. And then I saw this advert for Denham. I didn't know where it was, but I looked at the map and realised it's only about 20 minutes drive from where my son lives. that was a bit of an encouragement to me as well. I thought, that would be good. I could see, because by this time I'd got a little grandson, George, who, he had his 5th birthday this month, so he was just a few months old, under 1, when I saw this advert. I thought it'd be great to be able to see him every week and the other boys and be on hand to share with the family. So that's been a real bonus to see them so regularly. But what has been an enormous bonus is belonging to this wonderful community for the last 4 years. And it's been such a joy, a bonus, a real bonus in my kind of later years of retirement to be part of a team where there's shared vision, where there is vitality, and where there is a sense of God amongst us, bringing us together and moving us forward together. So that's been a joy. And I'm going to be sad to lose that, to leave that. I'll be busy in Sheffield, no doubt about it. And I got my certificate from the Bishop of Sheffield to give me permission to officiate. I've got the permission to officiate.
And we didn't expect anything else from you, Ian. We didn't think you were going to go up to Sheffield and just sit there twiddling thumbs. So I'm not surprised you got your certificate sorted out before you go full-time back up there.
It was, a little bit tempting to drift away into the meadows of retirement and settle down. But no, I thought about it for about 20 seconds. No, not for me.
Ian, you've got a friend who's been a friend for many years. He is a minister in America, in Long Island. His name is Roger. And he has a little project. He has started to write a book, and he's called it 4th Quarter Strategies. Tell us a bit about the picture, because for us Brits, it might not be immediately understandable because it's a sports analogy. And what the idea is behind that title, 4th Quarter Strategies.
Yeah, he explained it to me as American football terminology. When they get to the 4th quarter, it's very important that they get together, have a huddle, they settle on a strategy for that final quarter that can be the key to victory. It can turn the fortunes of that game around, that match, and they can end up winning because they've got a good, clear, strong strategy for the 4th quarter. And so he was relating that to our lives as older disciples of Jesus, having that 4th quarter strategy, not quitting, but really engaging with the task and seeing the vision and still going for it with all our hearts and having a strategy in our way forward. So he was telling me about it, and he sent me a chapter. As he wrote each chapter, he sent it to me, and he sent me about 4 or 5 chapters. And then last November, I went out and had a week with Roger and his wife. And it's a wonderful church. He leads a church of 500 people, and with all sorts of amazing programs, feeding the hungry as well. So I was I was there at Thanksgiving, delivering Thanksgiving meals around the impoverished part of the community. That was a joy. But I said to him, when I haven't had any more chapters of your book, when are you going to finish it? He said, well, I feel as if I've said everything I want to say. I've run out of steam. What I've written is all that I wanted to write. So that's a shame. I was hoping it would become a book. And then when I got back home, I was thinking about this and had what seemed to me to be a bright idea. And I contacted Roger and said, what about this? There's about 7 of us who were at Bible college together, who are still active in ministry, but it's now later ministry. Most of that 7 have written books and are still very actively engaged. 3 of them have had heart bypass surgery, but nevertheless, they've got real energy and real spiritual energy. And I said, what about if we added to what you've written down as a framework to talk about later ministry and develop that theme? We could call it, the best wine. The best wine was last, wasn't it, at the feast? So just an idea. And he really liked the idea. So I've emailed all the others, and they're pretty much up for it. So that's a writing project in embryo at the moment. It might come to fruition. If it does, I'll make sure you get the chance of getting a few copies here in Denham.
Yes, please. And just to widen out a bit from later ministry to later life as a follower of Jesus, what would you say to everyone here? What is your fourth quarter strategy when it comes to following Jesus in later life?
Yeah, what I would say to people here today, you've got an incredible lot to give still. We may, Paul talks about the outward man perishes, but the inward man is renewed day by day. So there's that inner spiritual vitality, even though we may not be as fit or as strong outwardly as we were when we were younger. Obviously, that is the case. But don't underestimate what you have got to contribute. You've got experience, you've got wisdom, you've got the grace of God in your life. You've learnt so much over the years of your service for God. And so there's no need to stop serving. Service will change, but you are a repository of wisdom and experience, and you can bring so much. And sometimes we underestimate that. We do. We think, oh, I can't do anything. Well, you can. You can be a mouthpiece of God. You can be a great encourager. You can be a wonderful mentor to people who need somebody to come along and put an arm around them and speak words of hope and encouragement and blessing to them.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And that partly answers the question I was going to ask you next. We started with you going onto park runs on a Saturday, you ride your bike, you keep intentionally fit as much as you can. Some of us here might be sitting here and say, well, I'm not as fit as you, Ian. My physical health is not in a good place. I am not very mobile anymore. How can I experience those extra years of zest? My doctors tell me it's not going to get any better.
No. It's a faith experience, isn't it? It's in what's in your heart and in your mind and in your head and in your experience, in your DNA, your spiritual DNA, rather than your physical prowess. We all lose strength, and my knees are really painful these days. When I get down, I can't get up again. And when I say I did the park run on Saturday, it was a jog, walk kind of park run. I used to do it in 25 minutes. I do it in 45 minutes now. So you see, things don't remain the same. There's an inevitable decline of fitness and health sometimes. But the essential you, and people often say this, I feel the same inside, they say, don't they? I look in the mirror, I'm surprised by how old I look because I feel exactly the same inside. Well, it's the inside, the fact that Christ has taken up residence within and that we are continuing to discover the secret of the indwelling Christ. And if he dwells within, then his radiance can shine through and you can become and be continually a voice of encouragement, a means of hope. You can write letters, you can pick up the phone. You might be into social media, I don't know, some people are in older life, but that's not the issue. It's the issue of being able to communicate what's in your heart and in your life to bring blessing to others, I think.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Edda and I talk most weeks with my parents on these wonderful devices where you can have video calls, and they are nearly 85 now. My mum isn't in great health, and one of the things they very intentionally do is to say, we are preparing for eternity. And that's another beautiful thing to see how they consciously do that. They're not closing their eyes. They know their earthly time is coming to an end at some point. But this joyful preparation for this next season, which is like fifth quarter, and that fifth quarter will go on forever and ever, is a beautiful thing. And it gives such a sense of purpose and perspective to people who focus only on the here and now. So we know the best is yet to come, and we are preparing for that. The rehearsal might be over soon, but this is going to be the big one. The other thing that we talked about when we were preparing for this afternoon was it was St. David's Day a few days ago. Any Welsh people here today? Oh, John, you're the only one today. Well done for holding up the Welsh flag. And you told me there's a quote which I think St. David said something very much towards the end of his life.
Yeah. He said, apparently, when he was on his deathbed, he rallied and said to all his followers, do the small things. Not right, isn't it? He said, and be joyful. Do the small things and be joyful. What good advice that is, isn't it? In the Minor Prophets it says, whatever your hand finds to do, do it with your whole might. Do it with your whole might. So do the small things. It may be, inconsequential things in our estimation, but as we do those things with diligence and with joy, then they have real value, not only to us, but to others. And bring joy to the heart of God, I think, as well.
That's beautiful. Well, we're nearly at the end of our conversation.
Cake.
There is a certain amount of mold DNA in Ian, definitely. Maybe we start with another wonderful picture that I think you learnt about through another of your friends, your friend Peter.
Oh, yeah.
Which is such a beautiful image for us to encourage us at a later stage in life.
My friend Peter, who lives in Southampton, he was one of those who were at Bible college together, and he was telling me about the conference that they had in their church. And one of the women who was attending the conference had this thought. She didn't know where it came from, but she had this thought, tell them about the second pressing of the olives. Tell them about the second pressing of the olives. She didn't know what it meant. She'd got no experience of pressing olives. But she did a little bit of research and discovered that when they press the olives, they don't discard the olives that they've pressed. They put them on one side. Then later on, they press them again. And out of that second pressing comes the extra virgin olive oil. That is a real quality olive oil that's so beautiful and so valuable. Tell them about the second pressing. Well, that's good news for us, isn't it? Good news. And she felt God was speaking to the older people in that conference who might have been writing themselves off and saying, well, I've done my bit, nothing more for me to do. And what God was saying through that little picture was, no, you haven't. There's still more to be done. And what you do will have real value. The second pressing will produce the beautiful oil, the oil of joy, the oil of gladness, the oil of blessing for others. Yeah.
That's beautiful.
It's a nice thought, isn't it?
Well, Ian, thank you just for giving us a bit of an insight into where you are at and in encouraging us to embrace those extra years of zest. You've been an enormous blessing to us over these last 4 years. Indeed. And we will make sure you remain an enormous blessing to us. Don't worry, you'll get your special invitations regularly to just be among us and to share with us what God has taught you.